Imagine a man full of sheer fury, riding toward Damascus, carrying murder in his heart. This man, Saul of Tarsus, carries official papers from 35 AD that let him locate and restrict followers of a movement he considers a dangerous heresy. These followers claim to be Christians, students of a recently dead person known as Jesus of Nazareth. However, destiny unfolded differently. This zealous persecutor of Christians changed quickly to become Christianity's most potent defender, therefore drastically altering the path of human history. From the streets of Jerusalem to the forums of Rome, from shackles in jail cells to shipwrecks on stormy seas, this man's incredible journey would help turn a small Jewish sect into the most practiced religion in the world. This is not a common tale of atonement. Trained in the finest rabbinical traditions, this is the story of how a gifted Jewish scholar developed into the Apostle Paul, the man who would write practically half of the New Testament and spread Christianity over the Roman Empire. His letters would reach billions, his theology would shape Western civilization, and his conversion would be associated with significant personal transformation. Why would a man turn absolutely against his deeply ingrained beliefs? How could a ruthless persecutor turn into the most influential missionary in history? Join us as we uncover the amazing factual story of the man who started as the most potent enemy of Christianity and developed into its most successful agent. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ are basic events that fundamentally altered the course of human history. Seen by countless students, his lessons and miracles laid the foundation for what would eventually become Christianity everywhere. Jesus began his public life approximately 30 years ago, after his birth in Bethlehem and upbringing in Nazareth. Growing up the son of a carpenter, he was a modest guy, beginning his holy work. Teaching about God's kingdom, Jesus visited Galilee and Judea and performed miraculous healings that astounded onlookers and drew big numbers of people. Over his 3-year journey, Jesus questioned accepted religious interpretations and fulfilled old predictions. His message of love, pardon, and atonement resonated powerfully with the people. Ecclesiastical rulers, sensing his growing influence as a danger to their power, were very nervous. Jesus surrounded himself with 12 disciples, regular people from many backgrounds, who would later become extraordinary messengers of his teachings. Through stories and direct instruction, he taught God's love, the worth of faith, and the approaching kingdom. From turning water into wine to feeding throngs with just a few loaves and fish, his miracles demonstrated his heavenly nature. His earthly endeavors culminated during Jerusalem's Passover. According to biblical accounts, one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, was caught in the Garden of Gethsemane and subjected to numerous trials before both religious and Roman officials betrayed him. Pontius Pilate saw no fault in him, even though popular demand drove him to sentence Jesus to death by crucifixion. After his burial in a borrowed tomb 3 days later, Jesus came out of the dead, first to Mary Magdalene, then to his followers, and many more. Over 40 days, he continued to be guiding and preparing his troops for their upcoming worldwide mission. His resurrection became the basis of Christian faith, since it revealed his victory over death and fulfilled prophecies. Originally a merciless enemy of the early Christians, Saul of Tarsus was an unusual messenger who was instrumental in changing this story outside of its Jewish setting. He had a profound awareness of Jewish law, customs, and practice. He experienced a strong conversion on his trip to Damascus and came across the rising Christ in a dazzling light. This meeting totally transformed him, and he began to go by Paul. Given his unusual background as both a Roman citizen and an educated Pharisee, Paul was particularly fitted to transmit Jesus' teachings across cultural boundaries. He undertook 3 large missionary travels over the Mediterranean, erecting churches at strategic locations and authoring books that would finally explain a beneficial portion of the New Testament. By means of his numerous travels and publications, Paul communicated challenging theological concepts in ways that would appeal to both Jewish and Gentile audiences. He stressed that everyone, from many ethnic or cultural origins, may find Christ's atonement. From a small Jewish group, this universal message helped Christianity expand across social and cultural boundaries. Among the several challenges Paul's mission faced were imprisonment, shipwrecks, beatings, and continuous opposition from both political and religious authorities. Still, his perseverance and dedication allowed thriving Christian communities all throughout the Roman Empire to bloom, paving the way for Christianity's ultimate spread into Europe, Africa, and beyond. These incidents still speak to us today, even though Christianity is still among the most often used and strongest religions on the planet. Spreading through Paul's missionary activity and the efforts of countless others, the lessons of Jesus have profoundly altered art, literature, philosophy, law, and moral frameworks across civilizations and centuries, molding the present world in numerous diverse ways. Let me tell you the early life and events of Saul, such that they cover the necessary period. Saul was from a devoted Jewish family. He was born in the bustling Roman city of Tarsus, in what is now Turkey. Tarsus, a prominent commercial and academic center in the 1st century AD, was a crossroads of civilizations where Eastern and Western cultures interacted. Young Saul's viewpoint and future ministry were much affected by his cosmopolitan surroundings. Growing up in a well-known Pharisee home, Saul appreciated the unusual gift of dual citizenship, Jewish and Roman. Most likely a successful trader or craftsman, his father made sure Saul received top education. The family insisted on strict regard for Jewish law and practices, therefore encouraging an environment in which religious observance permeated all aspects of daily life. Like Jewish boys, the young Saul's daily routine included intensive religious instruction, along with study of his father's trade. He mastered the practical skill of tent making, which would eventually support his missionary effort. This combination of intellectual and practical instruction was special for Jewish upbringing, based on the rabbinic principle that a parent must teach his kid both Torah and a trade. During his teenage years, they sent Saul to Jerusalem to intensify his religious study. There he learned under Gamaliel, one of the most prestigious Jewish teachers of that era. Renowned for his brilliance, moderate attitude toward religious concerns, and mastery of both Jewish law and secular science, Gamaliel belonged to the Sanhedrin, the highest Jewish council. Gamaliel provided guidance to Saul. I looked extensively at the Torah and its accepted interpretations. Mastery of the complex structure of spoken rules and conventions. The advanced study addresses and analyzes Pharisaic law. Development of Greek rhetorical and philosophical argumentative techniques. Among other languages, fluency in Greek, Arabic, and Hebrew. Knowledge of numerous Jewish intellectual schools. Comprehending Greco-Roman intellectual systems and culture. This careful training helped Saul develop into a strong student. Among the Pharisees, he was unique in his outstanding brilliance and relentless study commitment. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Saul could easily handle both Jewish and Hellenistic cultural settings, a skill that would be highly valuable for his future service. Tarsus's Greek culture greatly influenced Saul's development. Particularly focusing on Stoic philosophy, the city was renowned for its intellectual colleges. Though Saul remained firmly anchored in his Jewish views, he absorbed Greek concepts and expressions that would eventually enable him to engage effectively with Gentile viewers. Young Pharisee Saul showed incredible fervor for preserving Jewish practices from what he considered to be dangerous changes. Driven by his love of the law and dedication to protecting its purity, he saw the developing Christian movement as a serious threat to Judaism. Driven from this point of view, he zealously persecuted the early Christian church, a period of his life that would later bring much guilt. Combining Saul's strict Pharisaic background, exposure to Greco-Roman culture, Roman citizenship, and command of numerous languages, he created a special person, able to effectively negotiate many cultural and theological worlds. Though he was not aware of it at the time, this broad background helped him get ready for his destiny as the apostle to the Gentiles, where he would have to spread the word of Jesus Christ across national boundaries. Early circumstances provided him the tools he required to later rank as the most influential early missionary and theologian in Christianity. His intellectual rigidity, derived from his Jewish education, and his knowledge of Hellenistic philosophy, helped him properly present difficult theological concepts to both Jewish and Gentile audiences, therefore turning Christianity from a small Jewish sect into a worldwide religion. Among the most significant turning points in Christian history is Saul's amazing road to Damascus conversion. Seeing their beliefs about Jesus as a challenge to traditional Judaism, he had dedicated himself as a passionate Pharisee, persecuting the nascent Christian church. Armed with letters from the high priest, Saul set out to seize members of the Way, as early Christianity was known. Damascus. His name as a cruel persecutor came before him. Every city he visited made Christians cringe. Having imprisoned some Christians in Jerusalem, he previously oversaw the execution of Stephen, the first martyr for Christianity. But a brilliant light from heaven suddenly surrounded him when he arrived at Damascus about noon. This cosmic light rooted him with power. In this vulnerable time, he heard a voice calling to him in Hebrew, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" 3 days of actual blindness for Saul followed from his questioning of who was speaking, profoundly altering his life. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." He stayed in prayer and meditation in Damascus, where his companions led him. He neither ate nor drank. During this period, God spoke to a Christian named Ananias, instructing him to find Saul and touch him to restore his vision. Originally dubious given Saul's reputation, Ananias followed directions. Restoring Saul's bodily vision, Ananias's hands fell like scales. This was, more essentially, his spiritual awakening. Paul, the ardent defender of Christ, developed from the fervent persecutor of Christians. His metamorphosis was so complete that he began teaching in the Damascus synagogues, therefore verifying that Jesus was indeed the Son of God. This significant conversion changed Paul's life and the entire development of early Christianity. Paul changed into the most effective missionary and theologian once he tried to destroy the faith. Combining a careful study of Jewish law with awareness of Greco-Roman culture, his unique background helped him effectively transmit the gospel to audiences of both Jews and Gentiles. Paul's theology and mission began with his experience along the Damascus Road. Though not among Jesus' first disciples, his personal experience with the rising Christ bestowed upon him the power to claim apostleship. Since his own conversion came from God's pity, rather than any moral success. This experience also transformed his perspective on redemption by grace via faith. Following his conversion, Paul lived in Damascus and Arabia, organizing his experience and developing to see how the gospel addressed Gentiles as well as Jews. Since it proved that nobody was beyond the reach of divine grace, his conversion from persecutor to missionary was a strong proof of Christ's transformative power. Paul's conversion produced results considerably beyond merely his own transformation. Through his subsequent missionary trips, writings, and theological theories, he was crucial in bringing Christianity from its Jewish roots into a global faith. Considered a major part of the New Testament, his letters still influence Christian belief and practice today. Paul changed the landscape of early Christianity by embarking on numerous long-distance missionary travels over the Mediterranean after his dramatic conversion. From its Jewish beginnings, victory and tribulation defined these voyages and set the foundation for the universal religious transformation of Christianity. His first mission trip began in Antioch, approximately 47 AD, along with Barnabas and John Mark. Originally from Seleucia, they first landed in Cyprus, the native land of Barnabas. On this island, they encountered opposition as well as curiosity. Roman proconsul Sergius Paulus became their first significant Gentile conversion in Paphos after a dramatic confrontation with a Jewish sorcerer known as Bar Jesus. This conversion marked a significant milestone as it demonstrated the gospel's ability to penetrate even the highest levels of Roman authority. Traveling all over modern Turkey, they erected churches at Derbe, Antioch in Pisidia, Iconium, and Lystra. Lystra had an incredible event when villagers mistook Paul and Barnabas for Greek gods after healing a handicapped man. Paul began aggressively preaching to Gentiles, not only Jews. This marked a significant shift and led to significant theological discussions on Gentile membership in the early church. Paul's second mission led him farther into Europe, starting in 50 AD. Accompanied by Silas, he went back to past congregations after separating with Barnabas over a dispute concerning John Mark and had a vision calling him to Macedonia. From this heavenly direction, churches in major Greek cities, including Philippi, Thessalonica, and Corinth, emerged. Paul and Silas were imprisoned at Philippi. Then, an earthquake miraculously rescued them, transforming their jailer and his family. Working as a tent maker with Aquila and Priscilla on this journey, Paul stayed 18 months at Corinth. From this age, several New Testament epistles, especially letters to the Thessalonians, answering concerns about Christ's coming and suitable Christian living, emerged. Along with time in Athens, when Paul famously addressed the intellectuals at the Areopagus to demonstrate his ability for engaging with Greek intellectual life, the trip involved beginning about 53 AD. Paul's third missionary trip concentrated on building new churches as well as supporting already existing ones. His success in persuading people in Ephesus, where he lived almost 3 years, set up a riot among artists building shrines for the goddess Artemis. This long stay allowed Jesus to establish a robust church and equip members to share the news over Asia Minor. During these excursions, Paul overcame several challenges that tested his determination. He endured physical pain from shipwrecks, beatings, and imprisonment. Resistance from Jewish religious authorities, thinking his message was unconventional. Natural barriers, including challenging terrain and dangerous weather conditions. Christianity is opposing local officials and business interests. Cultural barriers keep Gentiles apart from Jewish conversion. Inside the expanding churches, inner conflict, personal health issues. He referred to it as his challenge in life. He faced limited resources and the necessity to work for personal gain. Despite these difficulties, Paul's planned approach yielded incredible success for his missionary activities. He established churches in major cities, therefore allowing Christianity to flourish organically along trade routes. He gained a reputation for finding local leaders, building churches, and maintaining correspondence and return visits. This strategy established self-sustaining communities that kept growing long after his death. Paul's success relied heavily on his adaptability. With his profound understanding of Jewish scripture, he portrayed Jesus as the awaited Messiah in synagogues. Among Gentiles, he identified shared ground in philosophical ideas and cultural knowledge. In many cultural contexts, this flexibility and his unwavering commitment to the basic gospel message proved fairly successful. His adventures came to an end with a last journey to Jerusalem, when his arrest started off a series of events leading to incarceration in Rome. Paul kept on with his ministry, writing and teaching, proving that house arrest had no effect on his missionary zeal. His ability to reach people even within Caesar's household members attested to how his impact infiltrated all aspects of Roman life. The consequences of these missionary trips go much beyond their initial success. Paul formulated significant Christian teachings, created a network of churches through which the faith would be kept and carried on in future generations, and designed a model for cross-cultural evangelism. Born from the encounters and challenges encountered on these tours, his writings to these churches still guide Christian doctrine and life today. Paul faced many challenges throughout his mission. Nonetheless, his unwavering commitment to spreading Christ's message transformed the early Christian church. Today, Christianity still reflects his profound religious concepts and resilience in the face of difficulty. Paul struggled physically rather severely. He endured imprisonment, frequent beatings, and severe physical assaults. According to his own story, he always lived in danger from hostile governments, criminals, and natural disasters. He survived 3 shipwrecks. Philippi saw him imprisoned and publicly flogged. Lystra saw him stoned and left for dead. He continued his work with extraordinary perseverance in spite of these difficulties. His letters show his level of suffering. Many imprisonments in several cities, regular beats and physical violence, constant death threat coming from a competitor. Personal health issues he called his thorn in the flesh. Poverty and hunger during his travels. Opposition from Jewish leaders as well as Gentile ones. Apart from personal challenges, Paul came into severe religious and cultural criticism. While some Gentile leaders saw Christianity as a threat to social order, Jewish religious officials considered his teachings about Jesus as heretical. He handled problems concerning social conventions and religious practices, since he had to manage challenging cultural differences between Jewish and Gentile converts. Through these challenges, his writings, which represent a beneficial portion of the New Testament, developed. While developing fundamental Christian principles, his writings addressed specific problems in several communities. Key ideas in his works are Christ's atonement via faith, the connection between law and grace, the Church's identity as Christ's body, harmony among Gentile and Jewish members, practical guidance on Christian life, Christ's resurrection and return. Over 2 millennia of influencing religious thought, these epistles became basic literature of Christian theology. His research on challenging theological concepts in intelligible language set the intellectual framework of Christianity. Especially powerful in Christian understanding of redemption, church life, and spiritual freedom were letters to the Romans, Corinthians, and Galatians. Paul had influence outside of his written output. His method of establishing churches in large cities created a mechanism for the expansion of Christianity over the Roman Empire. His emphasis on equipping local leaders ensured that places could grow on their own, therefore ensuring the long-term existence of the church. Above all, Paul's theology closed cultural divisions by presenting Christianity as a worldwide faith across racial and social boundaries. His interpretation of Christ's message helped non-Jewish audiences grasp Christianity while maintaining its basic values, thereby changing the direction of the world religion. Even his martyrdom at Rome, generally during Nero's persecution, between 64 and 67 AD, became a powerful memorial inspiring succeeding generations of Christians. Written from jail, his last letters give a model of perseverance amid persecution by showing unyielding faith and compassion for the congregations he established. Paul's writings continue to shape Christian theology and practice today. His illustration of cultural adaptation, in line with theological integrity, guides current missionary activity. Church life and personal spirituality, among many denominations and cultures, still mirror his teachings on faith, grace, and Christian fellowship. Together with his pragmatic understanding of church leadership and personal faith, his depth of theological insight guarantees his relevance for modern Christianity. His journey from persecutor to persecuted apostle reveals the changing power of faith. His tenacity against adversity still inspires Christians facing their own challenges. Let me spend some time on Paul's last years and martyrdom. Paul's last chapter of life was defined by enormous challenges and relentless faith. After years of missionary effort over the Mediterranean, his route to Rome was that of a prisoner of the Roman Empire rather than a free missionary. Beginning a perilous maritime journey, he proved his outstanding bravery and leadership by surviving a terrible shipwreck off Malta in chains. About 60 AD, Paul came to Rome and was thrown under house arrest. Nonetheless, he kept a high degree of activity in his ministry under restricted conditions. Over this period, he maintained visiting individuals and writing letters to churches. Therefore, he turned his place of imprisonment into an evangelical center. His ability to reach people even within Caesar's household members proved how his influence pervaded all aspects of Roman life. The Roman political climate under Emperor Nero was always hostile to Christians. Following Rome's massive fire in 64 AD, Nero accused the Christian population, leading to intense persecution. According to historical accounts, Nero imprisoned Paul once more during this time, treating him cruelly in the Mamertine prison. Early church history claims that Paul's execution occurred during the persecution of Nero, circa 67 AD. Being a Roman citizen, he experienced a somewhat light death from beheading rather than crucifixion. His last known words in his letters show a profound sense of serenity and triumph. I have persevered, completed the task, and maintained my faith. Paul's martyrdom is quite relevant even after his death, since it demonstrated the costs of discipleship he had constantly promoted. His courage has inspired generations of Christians to face death. His execution site in Rome changed to become a popular travel destination. His martyrdom enabled Christianity to grow quite rapidly in Rome. Long after Paul passed away, his life and teachings still had a growing impact. Churches compiled his correspondence and distributed it extensively. For Christian doctrine, his theological theories grew indispensable. His methods of evangelism shaped centuries of church expansion. Future missionaries aspired to follow his model of preserving doctrinal purity and cultural sensitivity. Still fundamental to Christianity today is Paul's legacy. Out of the New Testament, his epistles make up around half. His theological points of view still shape Christian ideas and behavior. His teachings on faith, grace, and church organization guide modern churches. For Christians, his personal metamorphosis from persecutor to apostle motivates Paul, who was essential in transforming a small Jewish community into a global faith via his writings, missionary activity, and, at last, sacrifice. Instead of abating his influence, his martyrdom in Rome helped to highlight his message and inspire many others to carry on the work he began. Usually associated with his execution, the location became a pilgrimage and memorial site, currently honored by the Basilica of St. Paul, outside the walls in Rome. Together with his ongoing intellectual and spiritual legacy, this physical memorial draws people to the faith he lived and died for. Paul's last years and martyrdom catch the principles he frequently wrote: the sufficiency of God's grace, the power of faith in adversity, and the ultimate triumph of the gospel message. Like his life, his death confirmed the transforming power of the Christian faith and its ability to cross cultural, social, and even death itself. His death presented a strong end to a life dedicated to proclaiming Christ, and he faced it with faith and courage. His martyrdom was not an end, but rather a beginning, as his ideals and behavior continue to inspire and encourage Christians to this day. Paul's theological contributions shaped Christian theology significantly and still shape religious views today. His unique background, combining Greek intellectual expertise with important Jewish research, helped him to convey Christian theology in ways that transcended cultural barriers and set enduring standards. Paul's theology concentrated largely on the idea of atonement by means of confidence in Jesus Christ. He put out this novel theory: following Christ's death and resurrection brings about atonement instead of following religious guidelines. This teaching radically diverged from traditional Jewish thinking and brought Christianity to individuals from all backgrounds. The theological legacy of Paul mostly consists of the grace doctrine. It underscored God's unfair favor for humans. Salvation, I now know, is a gift rather than something one gets by work. He came to see human reactions in line with divine grace. He objectified the existing religious systems, which were based on merit and custom. Christ's unity encouraged balance between Gentile and Jewish followers, made social and cultural divisions inside the church obsolete, started to consider the church as Christ's body, promoted harmony consistent with cultural diversity. Christ's personality. It clearly defined Christ's divine nature and human incarnation. We defined the significance of Christ's death and resurrection. Come to see Christ as the replacement Adam. Link Old Testament prophecies with their fulfillment in Jesus. Church methodology and architecture. I have designed guidelines for leaders of churches. Applied pragmatic solutions for worship and communal life. Create systems meant to help settle disputes. Specify the moral behavior standards of Christian communities. His religious systems integrated numerous elements of culture. Using Greek philosophical ideas, expressed Jewish religious perspectives. I have designed Jewish scriptural interpretation for readers with Gentile backgrounds. Created new theological terminology, crossing cultural boundaries. I have created universal values applicable in many different societies. Theological writings by Paul have continuous influence. His forceful letters, most of which are from the New Testament, defining basic Christian doctrines. His method of orienting the gospel for diverse societies. How he blends practical application with religious truth. Apart from bringing many civilizations under the Christian faith, this theological legacy still offers direction for Christians' behavior and thinking nowadays, across denominational and cultural boundaries. Paul's emphasis on grace, faith, and unity is crucial to Christian theology, even if his method of connecting with many civilizations provides a framework for modern religious debate and missionary activities. His theological insights still guide management of modern challenges in religious and cultural integration. Maintaining its fundamental message and ideals, Paul created a doctrinal framework by means of his writings and missionary activity, enabling Christianity to transcend its Jewish beginnings and grow into a truly universal faith. Still today, this remarkable achievement impacts religious practice and thinking everywhere. His ability to clearly explain difficult theological ideas created patterns that still guide Christian theology and practice in our always connected society. He also took a practical approach to applying these truths in different cultural settings. Let me offer the last thoughts that satisfy the required count. Paul's path from a fervent persecutor to a passionate apostle marks one of the most incredible turns in history. His legacy inspires and impacts people all over civilizations and generations, and it highlights the enormous impact that altered life can have on the earth. Paul's story illustrates how supernatural intervention could completely veer a person's path and purpose in life. Through his extraordinary service, Paul changed the early Christian church in multiple ways. He transformed Christianity from a small Jewish movement in his hometown into a global faith. Still guiding the Christian viewpoint are the accepted basic theological concepts. We have demonstrated the ability to share heavenly truth across cultural boundaries. Under persecution and hardship, he showed unflinching bravery. The author created a still relevant paradigm for cross-cultural ministry. I have developed plans for a Christian community establishment that is environmentally friendly. The author precisely expressed challenging theological concepts in reasonable terms. History and into the present obviously indicate his continuous effect. The development of rigorous Christian doctrine and practice, and the rapid spread of Christianity over the Mediterranean area. His writings still inspire and direct Christians all around. The founding of churches that became centers of faith and society marks their influence. He set an example of personal growth and dedicated service. The study focuses on the integration of pragmatic living with religious concepts. The foundation for Christian missionaries operating among different civilizations. Paul's story presents a timeless understanding of human nature and spiritual transformation. The capacity of divine grace to convert even the most unlikely individuals. Cultural boundaries require respectful, knowledge-based breaking through. Tenacity in the face of difficulty and criticism. The importance of changing tactics while maintaining fundamental principles. The long-lasting results of honest faith and unambiguous direction. How could suffering support personal development and the faith-growing process? Examining Paul's life and work forces, one to see more closely the benefits of mentoring and shaping future leaders. Features of personal growth and their effects on society. The interaction of faith and culture in a society growing in variety reflects aspects of human development. The part about suffering serves both personal and spiritual growth. Presuming spiritual truth calls for honest communication. The ability of dedicated service to change the earth in terms of religion. The concord between belief and compassion. There is ongoing relevance to ancient knowledge for modern issues. This narrative illustrates how knowing historical figures can enable one to see answers for contemporary issues. Methods of close bridging religious and cultural divides exist to preserve faith under pressure. Methods of effective cross-cultural communication, illustrations of leadership in several civilizations, models of conflict and dispute handling, patterns in spiritual and personal growth, buildings for organizing and growing religious communities. Paul's life offers an arresting starting point for those attempting to understand the early development of Christianity and its relevance today. For those seeking to transform their own surroundings, the dramatic account of his conversion, the challenges he faced, and his unwavering dedication to his cause will still inspire modern viewers who find resonance in his story, combining personal development, cultural involvement, theological profundity, and practical ministry. Paul's legacy encourages viewers to engage more fully in biblical history as a source of knowledge and inspiration for modern life, rather than merely as an intellectual activity. His writings and life events still offer insights on human nature, spiritual growth, and the pragmatic challenges of following one's faith in a developed society. Paul's story reminds us that, although personal transformation often begins the process of significant change, it may also influence entire communities and next generations. His life demonstrates how being committed to truth, mixed with cultural understanding and pragmatic knowledge, could generate long-lasting positive change on Earth.